This is the Zemar Podcast. Elite Benefits of America helps small and mid-sized companies with their health insurance programs. And now, your host, Butch Zemar.
Many businesses have it all wrong. Many think that they're doing the right thing, but they really don't have any clue. Most don't even know their own way, and then they also get in their own way. They create bottlenecks without even seeing it. They think they're, solving issues and moving ahead, but they're really not. And most businesses fail. But at the same time, they fail to fail, if that makes any sense. They just keep on going, right? And so why is this, right? And so companies do just keep making progress, even though they're failing. Momentum is part of it. Stupidity and naiveness is another part of it. And then, of course, a big chunk of it's going to be luck, right? And so luck always plays a part in this. But luck is like, what is it, right? And so luck is really created by activity and some breaks that keep you going. When I say breaks, I mean like opportunities that show up that bridge that gap. I can't tell you how many times in the beginning of my career, those breaks definitely bridge gaps. And allows it to keep going. So there's a lot of big figures out there that have gone through this. Obviously, everybody knows who Elon Musk is these days, but he obviously came up with a team of his friends, PayPal, right? They gave up a ton of stuff, their apartments. I think they were sleeping in their office. They were showering at the local gym, but they kept pushing on, and they gave up a whole bunch of stuff to be there. Similar with SpaceX, they were running the issues with launches. Finally, they had a couple successful launches, which secured a contract with the government that helped them stay in business because I think they were only 1 or 2 payrolls away from being done. Jeff Bezos of Amazon, it was like this too. I think they went 5 years before they ever made any money. So I don't know how you go 5 years and not make money, but obviously, there's revenue coming in, but there's a ton of expenses to get to a certain point. I just don't know how he survived that. Obviously, maybe he was a different game than most of the small and mid-sized companies. There's venture capital money and whatnot, but there's a lot of other big celebrity items that done this. Obviously, Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, Richard Branson, right? The list goes on. But this doesn't really compare to the small and mid-sized companies that we rub elbows with every single day, the people listening to this podcast, as well as, just our own clientele in general. It's just America is driven off of small and mid-sized companies, not large. And so that's why, we'll bring a tax person on here. That's why a lot of tax issues that come with businesses really impact the mainstream businesses, and that's why there's a big push against it. And so, but a lot of these companies, it's either with these small and mid-sized, it's either you make the break or you get bust, right? There's no really in between. The bust part is is the scary part, but it's probably the part that keeps entrepreneurs that keep going. The bravery to keep going when they're dying. It's that urgency. They never want to quit. And it's kind of like that fight or flight response where they just kind of do every single thing they possibly can in order to keep it going. But I do know many people who finally got to the point and threw in the towel, thinking that the pastures were greener on the other side. Much of this is pressure at home. I've been fortunate. Julie, my wife, has never pushed me that far, especially at the lowest point. But there's a lot of other businesses out there that end up just quitting because we've seen it where the pressure is just too great. And whether it made sense for the household to do that or there was pressure from people that didn't understand it because they weren't working the business. But with that said, a lot of people just stumble through it. They just kind of figure it out. They get to this rough patch and they just kind of grind it out and try to create momentum and bridge the gap with some breaks here and there. And hopefully the distance between the two breaks isn't too far so they can keep going. And when they're in a tough spot, they use a whole bunch of stuff to keep the momentum going. They use logic, they use numbers, they crunch things, they try to do increased activity, and there is a little bit of emotion in there because it creates purpose. But sometimes when we let our emotions get to the best of us, many business owners and executives create issues that prevent their growth inside the company. And it's unfortunate. They just bottleneck the whole thing. Most of them don't even see it. Most of them don't even know. Even if you point it out, it's just not obvious to them. In other cases, they just completely ignore it. Like they just don't care. They're just going to keep pushing on. Some of it's stubbornness. Some of it's naiveness. They just kind of just keep stumbling through things and figuring it out, right? But the reality to it all is by getting in the way, bottlenecking it, you basically blind yourself from where you could be. There's a lot of progress that can be made if you just get out of your own way. You can definitely make bigger progress if you take emotions out of it, use numbers, use logic, and keep pushing forward and just stay out of the way. Even for myself, I've learned where if I'm not the one doing it, it goes better, it goes faster. It's a sure thing, right? And so whereas I get distracted, there's a lot of things going on. There's times where I'm like, well, it didn't work that way before, so I'm going to do it my old way. And, I'm just, a human just like everybody else is. But there's, some things that I probably could do a lot better than staff. But there's a book out there, Buy Back Your Time. And in that book, it just talks about, even 80% done by somebody else is 100% much better than doing it yourself to expand and grow. It's about expanding and growth, right? And so it's about having somebody else come up with ideas and influence and execution to move past a certain point. And even though some people have a hard time letting go, but usually you'll make more progress in the long run. But there's so many people that get so short-sighted, it shorts the whole cycle so you don't get that far. At times, you could be a penny wise, but definitely a pound foolish, and you end up not making the progress you wanted. One way to look at it is like a fresh tube of toothpaste, right? Most people just squeeze and never pay attention and put it on the toothbrush. You could be filling that entire toothbrush with so much toothpaste it doesn't even make a difference. You have a fresh tube, there's an endless supply. But when the toothpaste is low, you start paying attention a little bit more. You start rationing the toothpaste to make it last longer. In some ways, this practice is good. There's books out there that talk about, you run your business this way, you can actually make some progress. And in some ways, with the right strategies, that's possible. But a lot of times, it's only for the short term, depending on what the strategy is and what you're trying to do. In the long term, it could still be a major issue by rationing, right? In this case, you still got an empty tube. All you're doing is prolonging it, which creates more problems. The same goes in business and combat, like war. You just can't continue to keep playing not to lose. You're not going to make progress. You might win some battles along the way, even some games if you're playing sports, or win some good sales along the way just by playing not to lose. But the problem is you're not going to have the winning record that you're looking for, whether it's in sports or business, until you start playing to win. Otherwise, it becomes this lose-lose battle where all you do is fighting to prevent a loss, and usually in most cases you end up gravitating towards the loss. And it happens like that in business. And sometimes you could even spend all your time, your money, your resources to try to make some progress, and sometimes you just kind of come even with the expenses versus revenue, but the chances are you gain an offensive advantage. And when you gain an offensive advantage in any sport, including business, you're in opportunities to score goals, which is the more goals you get, the more wins you get. But then it becomes just a number game. How many shots you can get on net, right? How many opportunities you can put in the net. It's the only way you could score, right? Chances are, if you don't put enough shots on the net, you're not going to win. You're not going to win games. And it could go with any sport, right? If you're not putting opportunities towards the basket, the goal, whatever it might be, sales, revenue, you're not going to get as much as you want because you're not creating the opportunities. But putting yourself in that position creates more opportunity, moves you closer to that win. Wins are the big picture goal, no matter if you're in business or in sports, right? You got to get enough of those to keep going, right? The little problems start going away when there's enough wins, right? So losses are dime a dozen, right? Wins are a dime a dozen. But when you get enough consecutive wins, you start forgetting about the losses and you start focusing on the wins. That's when you start playing the win. you have bigger fish to go after at that point, not only in terms of revenue, but you got bigger problems too, right? The small stuff goes away. You can focus on the bigger opportunities, bigger stuff that's going to happen. And of course, like most of our podcasts, we kind of move this back to benefits, right? Benefits is one of the most expensive line items on a profit and loss statement of any company in America, right? And there's many reasons behind that. And businesses just let their emotions get in the way of trying to make educated decisions on how to move forward with creative designs, plan designs, cutting costs, increasing coverage or getting better coverage, less out of pocket for the employees, expanding networks, all this stuff. They just get their emotions in the way of it. Just kind of clouds their vision to move forward. And these emotions, cloudiness of your vision, come in many different forms when it comes to benefits, right? It could be attachment to the insurance company, the provider network. It could be just a fear of changing, whether you're worried about the feedback from the employees, you're worried about losing your job if it's not a good fit. Like, you just rather everything to be the same. You don't really care what the cost is, partly because you're not running the finances. And so it's really surprising that these emotions haven't caused companies to actually force themselves into bankruptcy as much as it should. And I'm not saying that, in a negative way where people should just, go into bankruptcy because they're not paying attention to Butch Zemar. But, the biggest thing is, hardship is one of the finest lessons of life, right? And so if you find lucky streaks and you keep going, sometimes you never learn the true lesson that's in there until you fail. And it's unfortunately what benefit programs, they figure out a way to keep going. And they bridge that gap every single time without actually solving the problem, and they get their emotions in the way of making good decisions. But in a benefit package in a company, the end goal is to cut costs, increase coverage for the employees. But how do you do that? And so we had a prospect one time, about 125 employees, Chicagoland area, that we showed a path to save them $150,000 a year. We cut the deductible and out of pocket for the employees in half, and zero network requirements. They can go anywhere they want. But in fact, we provided a list that was created of providers by third-party source that already had all the highest ratings available, whether it's an outpatient surgery for minor stuff or major stuff, and you have to go to circles of excellence. And so we already did the homework, and we provided this list. And if the employees go there, they have zero out of pocket. So your employees, if they get diagnosed with some of the major conditions that people fear the most, the companies have a benefit package of zero out of pocket for the employees. There's no skin in the game for the employee other than to focus on their health care. And unfortunately, this company didn't move forward on it because the fear of change. They were fear of fielding questions about, what do you mean I could go anywhere I want, right? And it just gets in the way of creating progress for a benefit package for a company. Any type of growth that you would have potentially had is now dampened by increased benefit spending in the company. But why would you get in your own way, especially when there's a better outlook? I mean, after all, we've talked about, the Purdue University decided they were going to flip the whole thing upside down. The lady built a team and said, how do we solve this crisis, right? For almost 10 years now, they've averaged 1% increase, right? So, they did it. Why can't you do it? Sure, smaller companies have a little more struggle with this, but you could still head yourself in the right path, and maybe that right path to start off may not save you $150,000. Maybe that first year it's only $5,000. But I tell you, if a company's saving $5,000, I'm sure they can figure out something better to spend besides an insurance premium. So I'm not sure if this sounds like you, but definitely get out of your own way. Start making some progress out there so you can win the game.